thunderous pounding shook Disrel from his turbulent slumber. Sala quivered at his bedside, clutching her blanket around her shoulders and pushing on his shoulder. Her panicked eyes gripped him.
Disrel! Soldiers at the door!
Disrel flew up from the bed and pulled her out into the living area. He wanted to shove her into a cabinet somewhere, just like his father had done to them. But now that they were grown, there was nowhere to hide. He pushed her into her room. "Get back in bed." He shut Sala's bedroom door, determined to face the soldiers alone so that they might overlook Sala entirely. His crimes weren't hers.
Open this door before we break it down.
"I'm coming!" he bellowed in truculent Kobalt, squeezing his feet into his shoes. He flung the apartment door open and recoiled as another barrage of fists and staves rained into the room. A dark gauntlet seized him by the shoulder and hurled him out into the hallway.
Downstairs, all of you.
The sergeant stepped into the room and glared.
Where's the other tenant?
Disrel stared numbly at the officer, his jaw loose.
I asked where your roommate is.
His eyes darted from floor to wall. "I don't have a roommate." The soldier got in Disrel's face.
Well, your neighbor says you do.
Fear sent shocks through his stomach, and he choked on his words. "My sister? I guess she's still in bed." The sergeant motioned with his head, and two of his soldiers made for Sala's bedroom. Two others pulled Disrel down the hallway and onto the elevator. A moment later, the others followed with Sala hyperventilating between them. Disrel leaned his head against the wall and focused. This was about the flag. They had tracked him down, and now Sala would suffer and die with him. The elevator descended, and Sala sucked little puffs of air through quivering lips. The young soldiers peered askance at her through their visors. When the doors opened to the dark outside world, the first thing to greet Disrel was the peeved face of a high-ranking sable. She snatched him from the elevator and pushed him to the ground in the courtyard.
Finally. We've been waiting a long time for you.
Disrel kept low on his knees. "I sleep soundly." The apartment's other tenants stood in rows, clutching blankets and yawning, shivering from shock. Sala shook like a leaf. A platoon of sables bristled along the walk, and soldiers surrounded the assembly with arms ready. The sable commander marched a circle around Disrel, her red boot heels ringing maliciously, her livid eyes scoring him. Her deep auburn hair was bunched on the back of her head like a sour cherry, and her strong nose plowed through space. Sables were as strong as men, and twice as mean.
An act of sedition was committed last night. Pyron, by the flavor of it. The Imperial flag was stolen, and a flag bearing the blasphemy Pyron is free was raised over the circle. If any of you know who did this, it is your patriotic duty to turn them in immediately. Do not think you can save your friend or family member with silence. If we discover the thief belongs to you, your entire family will be dishonored and die with him. Therefore, it is in your best interest to be the first one to report any tips or leads on his identity.
A soldier changed out the chip in the hollow poster on the street corner, and its ethereal screen projected a 3-second capture of a faceless black figure raising the white flag. The crude emblem on his chest was his only identifier. The sable turned away from the group.
This is the skin he was wearing when he committed the crime. As long as this imposter is free, you won't be. Do I make everything clear?
Mutterings rippled through the group. The names Selenite Skinhound and Tourmaline Renegade were whispered several times. The sable marched toward her troops, shoulders and hips swinging.
Now, back to bed.
A whiny male voice broke over the crowd.
"Why can't you ashrats learn to comply? I'm sick of you making life so hard for all of us."
Disrel's neck tingled under the burning eyes of the other tenants. He pushed to his feet. What do you know about a hard life, Turk? Pyrons don't even have choices anymore. The sable about-faced stomped back over, seized him by the neck, and forced him down on his knees. Her curved blade glistened in her other hand.
Do you want to die now or later?
Disrel avoided her gaze. Later's fine.
Then shut up. We're also putting a curfew in place to keep things quiet until we capture the renegade. So make sure you're home before sunset each night.
She lifted her hand and marched off with her sables toward the next apartment building. A rock glanced off Disrel's back, sending pain through his ribs. Really? Pyron is free? A neighbor from down the hall sneered. Turk leaned over and glared.
We are in a new age. Old cultures and their old ideas just need to die off like old people.
Disrel's hands shook. Maybe, if you heard the stories of our elders, you'd see the cage you live in. Fairy tales. Another tenant paused at the apartment doors. We only have curfews and safety taxes because of your kind. The grumbling tenants funneled back into the complex to return to their beds. The few Pyrons hung back in silence, waiting for the halls to be clear of their Kobalt neighbors. Sala's eyes burned at him, hot with tears.
You better not have anything to do with this.
Disrel turned away. Go back to bed. I'll be up in a minute. Dark clouds shrouded Tourmal. He hung his head and kicked a rock across the courtyard. Every time Pyron kicked, the Kobalt noose tightened around his throat. And every time Pyron kept still, the Kobalt noose tightened again. The hollow poster's light glared against the buildings, casting its images of the flag thief's skin upon every mirror on the block. An overwhelming sense of inadequacy washed through Disrel. He was so alone.
Would you like a little help?
Disrel whirled upon the hedge behind him. Who said that?
Over here.
Leaning up against the corner of the building, deep in the shadows, stood a man as stout as a tree, clad in aubergine, and wearing an opaque visored helmet. Disrel clenched his fists. Who are you? What do you want?
I saw you take the flag.